So in this video, I want to give you a little bit more tips and strategies for your resume. So one of the main things that I tell people when they're sending out the resume, make sure that you send it out as a PDF file whenever possible. The reason I say that is because sometimes when you send your resume out as a Word document, depending on the version of doc Word doc they have, it can change around and mess around the formatting, right? So that's something I wanted to make sure that you understand is make sure that you simply send it as a PDF file if you know how to do that. Usually if you go to file and if you're using what do you call Google Docs, you can essentially go to file and then go to download, and it will have the option to essentially download it as a PDF. In Word doc, if you have that, you might actually have to you might have the option to save as a PDF, or in other words, you can sometimes when you go to file and then go to print, you can print essentially as a PDF. It doesn't mean that you will actually physically print. It just says that it's printing, and you can essentially save it as in your computer as a PDF. So when you're sending a resume, especially when you're emailing it or when you're uploading it to some sort of a ATS system, like resume system, right, where people applicant tracking system, right? So sometimes the formatting and everything can kind of mess up, right? So one of the things that I would recommend that you do when you're sending it out, send it as a PDF file whenever possible. And the next thing is, make sure that you name your resume correctly before you send it out, right? Something that I've seen that people don't, they kind of put it as resume, or they have some random names. But one of the things that in order for make it easier for the interviewers to recognize your resume and use it, make sure that you name it correctly. So I'm using this kind of format where I'm using the first name and the last name and then just calling it resume. All right, and it's just the most effective ones I have seen, right? So you can even have on the side, first name, last name, resume, and if you're a project manager, you can say resume project manager. So you can make it that way if you wish, but as long as you have first name, last name, resume, and then hopefully you will save it as a PDF file after this video, I think that would be good enough, and they will know what it is. And the next thing, obviously, is edit your resume out loud at least 3 times. So editing, you might actually have to edit it a lot more than 3 times, especially if you're continually making refinements and things like that, right? So make sure that you take time to read it out at least three times out loud, so that way the sentence structure and everything flows, right? So your job is to make it, as an expert, you say make it easier as easy as possible to read and understand your resume, because when especially something like a document or something is difficult to read, people don't want to continue reading it. They want to just they don't want to deal with that trouble. They want to kind of read whatever they can and then move on to doing the next thing they can easily do, right? So your job is when you're creating a resume, have a format that is really easy to read, that is very pleasing to the eye, and make sure there's no errors, there's no grammatical errors that makes it difficult to read, right? Make it as much as you can, really make it as easy as possible to read and understand your resume, right? And the next one I would say is, when you, especially for job interviews and jobs and things like that, or resumes, make sure that you create a professionally sounding email address, right? Like, for example, your first name and last name at gmail.com and things like that. Don't use one that you were using in your high school or anything like that, right? So use a one that kind of talks to your name, right? First name and last name, and maybe it's okay to put some numbers if if they're taken, that's fine, right? But try to stick around with using email address that that sounds professional. Then it's just have your name and use this email address for your for your resume activities and getting interviews and things like that. And the next one I want to talk to you a little bit about is create multiple resumes to match different job types, right? So sometimes you might have, you might be applying for different roles, right? Like for example, if you're applying for jobs in customer success management, you can create one for customer success management, and because customer success managers are very relevant to the account management jobs, you can create another one for account management, right? So have multiple job resumes. I have to have multiple resumes with different type of content depending on the job title that you're applying for. Because one of the things that people don't know is that just because you only qualify for customer success manager, you can actually apply for account management roles as well. So that's one of the things that you can do and search around to see if there's similar jobs that represent the ideal job that you're going, because some of those responsibilities might be very much stays the same, right? Like for example, project manager and project coordinator, right? So things like that, right? So have very similarities. So if you can create a specific resume that matches that specific job type or job roles, you will have more luck because it's obviously more targeted towards that specific role, right? So that's one of the things that I can let you know that you should do. And these ones, avoid keyword stuffing. Obviously make sure that you're not trying to put all the best keywords out there. Make sure that you're talking about the specific keywords that are actually relevant to your ideal role and relevant to your current skills. That are you don't need to you do need to use a little bit of keyword. It just don't stuff the whole thing with professionally sounding words and make it difficult for them to understand what you're talking about, because every role have very specific project management. You need to know how to do budgeting, you need to know how to do scope, right? You need to know how to make plans, you need to know how to use a software like project management tool, right? So there are not a lot of keywords, but you need to know what they are, right? So how to know what they are is essentially go through about 5 to 10 job descriptions and know what those ones are. And don't try to stuff everything that you learn from that. Just find the ones that represent your specific job role, and then maybe stick around. Especially like the best place to like put the keywords that are relevant to you would be your skills section, right? So that we talked about that earlier, right? So other places, if you were stuffing it's I would recommend that you're doing it sparingly. Okay. And the next tip I have to give you is avoid using a long sentences in your resume. The reason for that is because again, like people, especially recruiters and recruiters, right? They only spend about 7.5 seconds on your resume. So if you're writing a lot long sentences, it can take a lot of their time to understand what understand what you have done in terms of your experience and then to understand your abilities from there, right? So one of the things that I recommend you do is minimize. You can have multiple sentences, that's okay, but avoid long sentences as much as you can. Because long sentences just makes it much more difficult to read. It doesn't make it easier to understand something. The short sentences really help to understand what's going on, right? So start with writing in short sentences whenever you're writing your resume and when you're working on your resume. Okay. And the next one is use a simple format for your resumes. You don't need to use anything extravagant. I see people trying to put everything in one page. That's not necessary. I don't recommend that to people. If you have to use 2 pages, that's okay, but make sure that it's simple enough that people can quickly understand and it's visually somewhat pleasing for people to look at, right? So I've given you some templates that we've already gotten really good feedback from interviewers and recruiters, and they even ask us did you use like a professional coach to prepare these resumes, right? But the key thing is that we kind of done a decent amount of research, and we have got confirmation from interviewers on our resumes, and especially the formatting to kind of make sure that you're presenting the best information about you to your interviewers and to your recruiters essentially, right? So that's one of the things. So start with using some sort of a simple format for the resumes. You can use our templates if you wish, but that's one of the recommendations I have. Okay, so that's all I have for this video, and I'll see you on the next one.